Good evening. On behalf of our hosting nonpartisan nonprofit organizations, consisting of the Kenosha branch of the American Association of University Women, the Kenosha Women's Network, and Women's Club of Kenosha, we welcome you to the 2024 Fall Election Forum for candidates vying for the seat of Kenosha County District Attorney, State Assembly for District 64, and State Assembly District 55. My name is Becky Matoska-Mentink, and I am privileged to be the moderator of this evening's event. Candidates running for these offices were contacted by members of the hosting organizations. The candidates present this evening are Ben DeSmit, candidate Assembly District 65, Tip McGuire, incumbent candidate Assembly District 64, Carly McNeil, candidate Kenosha County District Attorney. A series of questions will be asked on various topics, and they have been submitted by the public. Candidates have not been provided with the information of the selected topics or the questions in advance. There is an expectation of courtesy from candidates and the audience. An interruption of the speaker will not be tolerated. There will be no name calling or other derogatory attacks. If an infraction occurs, a warning will be provided. Further violation will result in the offending candidate forfeiting the remaining time for that response. Candidates will remain seated for the entire portion of the forum. Each candidate will be provided up to 2 minutes as an opening statement. Following the conclusion of the questions, each candidate will be allowed up to 2 minutes to deliver a closing statement. Each question will be asked of the candidates from each race and will be allowed 2 minutes for answering. Time will strictly be enforced. With that, we will begin the forum. The first 3 questions will be issued to all candidates, with Ben DeSmit answering first. Discuss one experience or achievement that makes you uniquely qualified for the position you are seeking, and how does that play into what you hope to achieve in office?
Well, I'd just like to start by saying thank you to the Kenosha Women's Network, to the AAUW, and also to the Women's Club for hosting this event. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk about this campaign. One experience that has really fortified me in this race started back during the pandemic. As a small business owner, particularly a small business owner that owns a restaurant and a tavern, during that pandemic, of course, we were forced to close, which was the right decision that was made to protect the public. But during that time, as a small business owner, there were huge stressors put on us. How are we going to survive? Are we going to be able to support our employees? Can we make payroll? Are we just going to be able to make it through this time period? And during that time, I began having conversations with the current state representative, Todd Onstead. And through those conversations, through his guidance, I saw what invested public officials can do in their communities. And without Todd's help, without the help of the government during that time period, we would not have been able to survive. And that really showed me what good government can do, and it would be my honor to take that spirit to the State House. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Tip McGuire. I currently represent the 64th Assembly District, which is the northeast corner of Kenosha County, from I-94 to the shore. And it's so good to see you all here tonight, and thank you to our hosts. I think the number one experience that I would draw on in another term in the State Assembly is the success that I've had passing legislation through a Republican majority. I'm a Democrat, I'm a proud Democrat, but I've found tremendous success in working across the aisle to pass a number of things through the legislature since I was elected to the State Assembly. That included the Main Street Recovery Package last session, which assisted small businesses like Ben's, as well as working families who were struggling to recover from the pandemic. But on top of that, this past session, we passed 2 key pieces of legislation through, again, a Republican majority. The first was to ensure that public employees who had retired, but had retired before they could receive Medicare, would still be able to continue to have their health insurance that they had negotiated and bargained for. That includes police officers and firefighters and other public servants, to ensure that they could get the care that they needed after sacrificing and risking their lives for us for so long. The second bill was based on the story of a young woman here in Kenosha who experienced sexual misconduct from one of her educators at her school, and unfortunately found out that that wasn't a crime. Under Wisconsin statute, that wasn't a crime at the time, and so we drafted a bill along with Representative Onstead and Senator Wirch, and across party lines we worked with Senator James and Representative Spiros to pass this bill. It took a tremendous amount of work to get it through committee and get it across the finish line, but we were able to do it by working collaboratively across the aisle. Thank you.
I'm Carly McNeil, and I am running for district attorney here in Kenosha County. And this job is all about experience. It's about who has the knowledge and the skill to be a prosecutor in this community and also to run the office. And so I'm a lifelong Kenosha County resident. I am a career prosecutor. I joined the DA's office in late 2010 and was officially hired in 2011. And from that time forward, I have been working to earn the position that I'm now running for, of Kenosha County District Attorney. It's a professional job. It's not the kind of job where you can wake up in the morning and decide that's what you want to be. And so what I have done throughout my career is proven that I can do the work. And I've handled the most serious cases that we've had in Kenosha County, and so that includes cases up and including first-degree intentional homicide. And I've also worked my way up in the office to become the second in charge as the deputy district attorney. So I have proven to my colleagues that I can do the work. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is through this experience that I have gained, I've also been able to earn the endorsements of law enforcement. So people who know my work, people who are invested in the safety of the community, trust me to be the next district attorney. And that experience is absolutely critical, because you want a DA who is ready to do the job from day one, and that's who I am in this race. Thank you.
I apologize, I did get ahead of myself and I excluded your opening statements, so you'll have up to 2 minutes for those opening comments that you may have covered in that first question as well. Mr. McGuire.
Well, sure. Like I said, my name is Tip McGuire. I represent the 64th Assembly District. I was first elected in 2019. Before that, I was an assistant district attorney, and before that, I was a special prosecutor in the Kenosha DA's office. And I worked closely with Carly McNeil, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for the work that she's done and will continue to do as our next DA. Prior to law school, I had worked for my predecessor, Representative Peter Barca, who I also have tremendous respect for, in his legislative office for 5 years. I ran for office because there's something that has occurred in the last 15 years in the state of Wisconsin that troubles me, that I'm very concerned about, and that is the ability of working people to be able to build economic security for them and their families. And I think that that was tremendously undermined by former Governor Scott Walker, and I think that there's many avenues to economic security that we have to rebuild for regular working people. That is my number one passion. I recognize that there are challenges for working people today, and it is the number one thing that I hope to continue to work on in the future, is making sure that working people can succeed in this country. With that, I'll pass it off to Ben.
So I came to Kenosha initially in 2005 to accept a teaching position at Carthage College, which I thought would be my life's career. But things change, the world happens, and I had, before losing the position at Carthage College, started with my partner, Angela Cook, Union Park Tavern, and I had to, as they say, my favorite word, pivot, right, and shift completely into the service industry. So I understand what happens when life sort of strikes. Of course, it was the pandemic, difficulties happen, but as I said before, I also learned during that time period the important role that government plays, and particularly what wonderful elected officials we have in this area. Senator Bob Wirch, Tip McGuire, Todd Onstead, Greta Neubauer. We have incredible leaders here that are invested in their communities and really have served as models of amazing government. So I hope to be able to follow in the footsteps of Todd Onstead, and again, bring that really real-world experience to Madison.
So I'll start with a little bit about myself and my background. As I mentioned, I'm a lifelong Kenosha County resident. So I went to Bristol grade school growing up, and then I went to Central High School. And then after that, I went to a college no one's ever heard of called Union College in Schenectady, New York. And I went there because I played hockey growing up, and it was a place where I could play hockey in college, which was an amazing experience. And then I moved on and went to law school at Notre Dame Law School. And after that, I came back home. And so, like I said, I've been a career prosecutor. And what I want people to consider when they're choosing who should be their next DA is I want people to consider the two aspects of the job. So you have to be an excellent prosecutor. You have to be someone that the community can trust to take on the most difficult cases and to succeed and to do the work and to be able to win in the courtroom. And I've shown that I can do that. And then also you have to manage an office. The DA's office is sometimes referred to as the largest law office in Kenosha County because we have 20 attorneys total in the office and over 20 support staff. So that's the management responsibility for over 40 people is in the hands of the district attorney. And it doesn't matter if you're a great attorney if you can't manage that office, because most of the work of prosecution is done by the other people in the office who are assisting you. And I already have that management experience because I'm the deputy DA right now. I'm the second in charge of the office. And so again, when considering who should be the next district attorney, you want someone who has proven that they can do both of those things.
Thank you. Carly, you can keep
Oh,
going.
sorry.
What qualities of character have encouraged you to serve our constituents, and why do you believe this is important to the office you are seeking?
So what I tell people, to put it simply, why I'm running for DA is because I want to continue doing the job that I love in the place that I'm from. And so to be a good prosecutor, it requires passion. It requires that it's a job that you really want to do, because there are some really tough days. And there are some really long days at work and some really cases with extremely difficult facts. And when things go badly, it can be absolutely heartrending. So you need someone who is persistent and determined, who has those character traits, and also someone with integrity. Because ultimately the job of the district attorney, one of the reasons I love it so much, is because your job is to do the right thing in the end. And sometimes the right thing can be very, very hard. Sometimes you have to meet with a victim or talk to a victim and tell them why you cannot issue charges in their case. That's an extremely hard conversation, but you're not doing your job as a district attorney if you can't make that decision. And we also have ethical obligations, like disclosing information that is damaging to our case, but we have to do that. And so it takes a person of integrity to follow those rules. And then also to lead the office. You have to set the best example in the office as the district attorney. You have to be beyond reproach. And those are the characteristics that I bring to this position in my work. I have proven that over 13 years.
You want me to go next?
Ben.
So for me personally, I think the characteristics that I draw on most, that I think that are most important, as an educator, I think that empathy and kindness are probably two of the most important characteristics. Dealing with students, trying to raise people up, develop strategies for success, meeting students where they are and fostering that is extremely important. And I think that characteristic applied in politics can lead to a spirit of openness and bipartisanship that can encourage growth and development in a very positive way. Now, when I apply my experience in the tavern on top of that, right? The tavern is a public house, a tradition that stretches back really thousands of years. And we have customers who come in and have conversations about their life, about their difficulties, about their cares from really every political stripe, right? And you still need to have the openness, the kindness, the empathy. And that really crosses party lines. When I grew up in the 1980s and I became aware of politics, there was much more of a spirit of bipartisanship in Madison. And I think that we can start to get back to that a little bit, at least I would hope. I hope to model that spirit and engage with people in with that idea of openness and kindness, and hopefully develop trust in relationships. Now, as Carly said, integrity and a core set of political beliefs has to be maintained, but I still think there can be work across the aisle.
Well, I think Ben is absolutely right. I would say the two characteristics that I have and that I've displayed are cooperation and collaboration. Even when you don't agree with somebody entirely, there's still always the opportunity to work together on issues of common interest. You don't have to agree on 100% of everything. And I certainly don't believe that any political party holds a monopoly over good ideas. And so I've been able to work with others, try and make things happen that benefit people. I was born and raised here in Kenosha County. I'm a lifetime, North Sider. My mom still lives over near Bullen. And I know that people in Kenosha, they don't want the bickering that comes with modern politics. They certainly don't want Madison to look like Washington, D.C. So instead, what I've tried to do is try to bring a model of collaboration and cooperation to my approach to being a state legislator. And frankly, we've seen tremendous success with that. So I plan on continuing that. I do agree that there has to be a core set of political values that start off and a core set of just general values that you begin with and you hold on to, but you also can always find room to agree on issues of common interest.
Thank you. To Ben. What do you think the role of artificial intelligence will be in the future, and how will it affect your office?
Well, it is very interesting. As an educator, it really began to affect my office. I see it in some ways as an extension of kind of paper mills where students would sort of purchase pre-written papers or actually have folks do that. You see the curtain, right? You don't see what's behind the curtain, people writing and doing the work back there. And AI is a kind of a version of that. We don't see what's happening behind the curtain with artificial intelligence. I think the most important thing we have to be careful of with artificial intelligence is what it's going to do to our workforce, and absolutely make sure that we're sensitive to the positions, the livelihoods that folks have built their lives on, and the danger that AI poses to that. I'm not kind of a conspiracy theorist, a sky is falling type person, so, AI taking over like the movie Terminator, and the machines kind of destroy us all, but what the real threat is destroying folks, their livelihoods, right, which really has a tremendous impact on families and our future. So I know, thankfully, our friends in labor are really paying attention to this as automation begins to work its way more and more into manufacturing plants, making sure that workers have the opportunity to be trained and retrained so that the middle class can be protected and folks' lives can be protected.
Yeah, I think about this the same way that Ben does. I'm very concerned about the possibility that this could impact people's livelihoods and their ability to make a living and their ability to move them and their family forward. Obviously, from our perspective at the state level, we would like to encourage people to have economic opportunity, and so training opportunities is always good, and apprenticeship programs and things that allow people to specialize and really boost their earnings. But like Ben said, I'm concerned about the overall impact long-term of how AI could impact the economy and frankly, how people can work. I think there's certainly opportunities within it to make people's lives better, and we should look for those, but it is also a very quickly moving field, and so I think that there should be some measure of caution to begin with.
So as a prosecutor, it's extremely important that we know what the truth is. So my biggest concern with AI is that it can obscure what is true versus what is fake and manufactured. But I also think it's like any other technology. It can be used and have great value and great public benefit and public good, or it can be abused. And so sometimes we are extremely frustrated by the old school rules of the courtroom and of trials. I have so many witnesses asking us, well, can't I appear by Zoom? Or you have my recorded statement, why can't you use that? And it's because, well, 200 years ago, did they have that? No, you're coming into court. So you say that a little bit more nicely, but that is the nature of the courtroom. And I think that's really important in the age of AI. Because we have to be able to figure out what is true to do the very important work of a DA's office. So that is my major concern. But also, again, AI can be used for good things. It can be used to do the menial sort of tasks that you want to take away from the humans. You know, I've heard the police department talking about how AI can be used to take a body cam or squad video and edit things out for open records purposes. Well, how much better to have a computer machine do that in 5 minutes versus a human doing it in 3 hours. So there are benefits. I don't want to be down on the technology of AI, but again, the overwhelming importance in a DA's office and in the courtrooms is finding the truth, and I don't want AI to get in the way of that.
You can keep that. The first question will go to you for your office. As you well know, but for the public's interest, the elected district attorney is responsible for the management of attorneys, legal support, and victim witness paraprofessionals, as well as the office budget. Additionally, the elected DA plays important roles in investigation of crimes, determination of charges, prosecution and resolution of cases, the trial of cases, as well as oversight of that budget. What do you perceive to be an average workday of the elected DA? And if successful, how do you prioritize and manage all of those functions?
So it's really hard to talk about an average day in the DA's office because you always come in with a plan and then within 10 minutes that plan is gone. So you have to be adaptable. And one of the biggest struggles in any DA's office is the volume. We have thousands and thousands of cases. This is something that our judges are talking about right now. Every criminal judge in Kenosha County right now has around 1,000 cases. And those are split up between 3 prosecutors per judge. So we're talking about 300 cases per prosecutor. And again, the DA must manage all of that. So I can't necessarily say what a typical day looks like, but one of the things that the DA must be able to do is help the young attorneys, the new attorneys with that caseload. So you have to know how to do the job yourself, right? To help the people who are new to the office or who are new prosecutors. And then even experienced prosecutors have the tough cases, and they need someone to bounce those cases off of to get an opinion about. And so the DA also spends a lot of time doing that. And then the DA's office, because of the volume, has to be a bit of a machine. And so you have to, as the DA, or what I've been doing as the deputy DA, when there's a problem with that machine, you have to know how it works to be able to fix it. So a lot of what I do all day is I take calls from people in the office, or people come by my office and say, this part of our machine is broken. Let's talk about how we fix it. And then finally, what you do a lot of times is talk to the police and help them in the investigation when they have legal questions or when they're wondering what the charge is or if there's enough evidence. You have to be able to give them that advice. And all of these things I have been doing for years, working in the DA's office and becoming deputy DA.
The next question is to the assembly. Provide 1 or 2 examples of takeaways you have learned from your predecessors, colleagues, or other individuals.
Takeaways I've learned from my predecessor or others. Well, I think, I had a very good relationship with a now retiring Republican legislator from up in the Green Bay area. And I remember the first time that we sat down to discuss a bill. He had a bill that I wanted to amend because, frankly, it didn't really work that well. It was a criminal justice bill, and I thought it was creating a number of additional processes for Carly and others to go through that would have really slowed down the process and had a lot of very unnecessary hearings. And I remember I went in there, and I was still a freshman, and so I kind of came in maybe a little hot, you know. And I said, you know, here are the 9 changes we need to make. And he told me, you know, look, when you're meeting with new people, you should find out where a bill comes from first, and then start talking about the changes. Because you don't know why I wrote this bill, or what my goals are, or what the intent was, or why we included that line. And I thought that was really good advice, that not just for bills, but also for existing laws, right? Every single law, every single bill comes from a place. Somebody doesn't like the existing law or wants it changed in some capacity. And so it's first best to understand and then be understood, I think, is excellent advice. And then similarly, kind of a phrase, my father used to tell me, you should be able to disagree without being disagreeable. And I take that very seriously, that the opportunity that in those moments where we can't agree on something, that shouldn't sever or harm the entirety of our relationship, but rather should be a place that we can bounce back from as we continue to talk about ways to succeed for Wisconsin.
The same question?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. So,
I think that folks are having a little trouble hearing us back there.
oh, I'm sorry. All right. So a few things that I've heard. One comes from, I think, my time teaching up at Carthage. You know, I like to say that when I joined Carthage College, the faculty was at about 99, which is the same size as the state assembly. So that's kind of my perfect number that I'm used to working with. But one phrase that always sort of bothered me is that when you go to somebody with a problem and the response is, that's above my pay grade. Right? I can't listen to this. I don't have time to listen to this or help. So one aim, I think, really for a good legislator is constituent services. You have to be open and engaged in your community. That's why legislators come back to their community. They continue canvassing, right? They continue going door to door, spending time with constituents, having office hours. Making yourself open and available, I think, is extremely, extremely important. And I think that openness now goes again with the spirit of kindness, with the spirit of trust. It's very difficult to build those things if you shut people off, if you simply close yourself off from individuals. So I think that's an extremely important lesson to bring and to engage with.
Thank you. Describe what fairness and objectivity of a district attorney means and how you will hold yourself responsible to this description you provide.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important that our criminal justice system actually be just, and that it be fair to everybody within the system. And so one of the things that sometimes happens in the DA's office is that in order to ensure there is fairness, sometimes we have to ask a special prosecutor to take the case because there's some kind of conflict that exists. And the reason that we have to do that is because one of the most important things is that people have faith that their justice system is fair. And in fact, there's a rule in Wisconsin that when there is an officer-involved death, that investigation be led by an outside agency. And that's because we need the public to know that those investigations are being done fairly and impartially. So again, it's the same reason why sometimes prosecutors' offices have to give a case to a different DA's office, because we need the public to know there was no undue influence in the decision of that case. And then also another thing that's really important to me is that the justice system be fair regardless of economic status of the defendant. I want people to not have an unfair advantage simply because they have money in the criminal justice system. And so that's something that our state and our nation, we have appointed public defenders, so everybody has an attorney. And as a prosecutor, it's really important for me that I am not making decisions giving somebody additional benefits or the benefit of the doubt because of the family that they came from, because of their background, because they have money or a higher position. And so that's another thing that is extremely important to us, is that everyone across the board gets equal justice regardless of their background.
The next question to Ben. Same question for you though, too. Explain what your vision of working across the aisle is and how you might attempt to achieve the best outcomes for all of your constituents.
Well, I think, as I said before, I hope to bring a spirit of openness to the position, but also we really do have to maintain a core set of political beliefs, right? I think that's extremely important as well. But when I've gone canvassing, I mean, since the beginning of the primary election, when I talk to people face-to-face, one-on-one, we're really all concerned about the very same things. Public education, for instance, in Kenosha, right? Everyone wants the best for our children, right? Without question. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of movement we can make by having those open discussions, right? That, as Tip mentioned, right, that are not disagreeable, right? We can disagree on things, but we also have to understand that we're part of this, right? We're part of this community. We've all chosen to invest our lives here, and we hope for the best. And I think that in that spirit, we can make a tremendous amount of progress, right? It won't be easy, but I think Kenosha has a tremendous future ahead of it. Its position is just amazing. What could be better than to be between two incredible metropolitan areas? Public transportation is on our horizon, right? We're about to open the doors to connect through the rail, right? The entire Midwest. Kenosha can be a hub in so many ways. And I think that with that appropriate spirit in Madison, I think that we can achieve incredible things here.
Well, in my experience, the best way to work across the aisle and to collaborate and to be able to pass bills with consensus support is through communication, and it is through near constant communication, I would say. I think that one of the benefits of experience is you start to get comfortable in working with certain people, but there's always the opportunity to find people who have an interest in working on an issue that you may not have met or discussed before. This past session, a colleague of mine introduced a bill that was sort of adjacent to something that I had been working on. And so I approached another colleague and we chatted with them about seeing how we could combine forces. Hopefully in the coming session we'll be able to accomplish that. But I think looking for opportunities and then communicating and just sort of accepting getting out of your shell and going to people who you may not agree with on everything and just saying, hey, look, I think there's a space for us to agree here. That's the number one thing for me.
Thank you. Garlic? Explain the role of deferred prosecution agreements, diversion agreements, or non-prosecution agreements in keeping our community safe, and how they would be used if you're elected district attorney.
So when you're a prosecutor, you have to think of why you're doing what you're doing. And if you are just trying to rack up convictions, you're doing it wrong. What you should be trying to do is focus, one, on things like rehabilitation. Get people back on the right track so they're no longer a part of the criminal justice system, and so they're back to being good parents, good employees, productive members of society. And so that's why there's tremendous value to diversion programs, because it gets right at the heart of the problem. If someone's problem is that they have untreated mental health issues, and everybody knows it, this happens over and over in our criminal justice system. The police are called out from the very beginning because someone is in a mental health crisis. So isn't it better to direct that person to mental health treatment right away, so that they can overcome those mental health struggles rather than putting them in the jail. So that's one diversion option. Also, you have diversion options for things like drug abuse. Again, if drug abuse is the problem in this person's life, isn't it better that they be directed to treatment than they detox in the jail? And so one of the reasons why I'm so supportive of these diversion programs is because they do accomplish the goals of the criminal justice system. It is way better for crimes to never be committed and be prevented by these programs than for us to have to deal with them afterwards. And so for someone like myself, you know, I'm secure in the knowledge that I'm a tough prosecutor. I already know that. And so that's why I'm so open to these programs, because I have nothing to prove in terms of the skill and toughness of me as a prosecutor. And so that's why I can say we should emphasize these programs and we should believe in them, because they do protect our community.
Tip. Funding of our public school system has been brought to the forefront on many levels. How will you utilize your role and resources in the Assembly to address the issues and concerns of our constituents?
Well, I continue to support increasing funding from the state to our public schools. That's something that Governor Evers has been very steady on, and he has continued to push that. And while it hasn't always been agreed with by our Republican legislature, I'm hopeful that now that we have, let's say, fairer maps, that many of the people who previously, would have followed their party leadership on such an issue will start to feel more local pressure and will believe that it's necessary to fund our public schools. Because frankly, you know, opportunity should be available to every child in our state. Every kid should be able to go into a school where they get a good education, where they can have a good relationship with their teacher, where they can feel safe and they'll have the opportunity to learn. And then they can choose whatever path they want to follow for the rest of their lives. And that's how we have productive citizens. That's how we attract more people to come to Wisconsin. When you think about our workforce shortage, you have to remember that Wisconsin, as a general rule, continues to get a little bit older every year. And so, in fact, I think the last 10 years have been the lowest growth decade in Wisconsin's history. And the ways that we attract working families or people who want to have a kid to Wisconsin is by showing that their kids are going to have opportunity here, that their kids are going to be able to go to a good school. Honestly, nothing sells real estate like a good school. And we like to bring people to Wisconsin so they can work at our companies, they can succeed, they can join the middle class, and their kids can have a full opportunity. And that's the kind of budget that I'm looking for in the next session. Thank you.
I completely agree with that. Of course, our public schools are the cornerstone of our community, but they're also the cornerstone of our democracy, right? Without a strong public education system, we fail not just in our community, but the entire country begins to fail. So funding public education, the funding formula that we use in the state of Wisconsin is almost impenetrably difficult to understand. We need to have a funding formula that makes sense, and we need to have one that adequately supports all of our students. Our public schools are also our first line of defense in identifying so many problems that our society has difficulty with. For instance, mental health issues. Our public schools are one of the places where issues are identified first. And there simply isn't enough funding to offer the resources to identify the problems and adequately meet them. In addition to that aspect of our public education system, our university is underfunded, and our technical college system is also underfunded. Tip mentioned the future. There is so much incredible work that's being done to build bridges from our public colleges and universities and our technical colleges into high schools, where students now have the opportunity to complete associate degree programs before they've left high school, right? To get college credit, strong footing, and actually have a career path forward. If we adequately funded our public institutions, imagine how that could be spread throughout the state, right? And there's a lot of bipartisanship, I think, possible on just that issue.
According to the individual submitting this particular question, there are studies that show racial disparities in drug law enforcement, despite the fact that white people and people of color use and sell drugs at the same rate. What would you do to minimize these disparities?
So one thing I think that we have to do is we have to face the truth. And in Wisconsin, there is a large disparity, not just in the enforcement of drug laws, but also in terms of incarceration of people of color. And we have to be honest about that to try to figure out what the solutions are. And one of the things that we have done within our office that I am proud of is that at this point, nearly half of our office, including myself, we've gone to a workshop regarding racial equity, and that has been so informative because the reason that this problem is so big is because it's so rooted in the history of our country. So not just Wisconsin, not just Kenosha, but all across America. And part of the issue here is that the problem feels so big that solutions feel difficult. But the message that we learned is that no one person can do everything, but we can all do something. And so I think it's on the DA's office to try to be part of the solution every step along the way, to listen to the members of our community who are being impacted by this, to hear those concerns and to work for solutions. And part of that is having a good relationship with law enforcement, which is what I have fostered over the years. And again, part of it is striving for equal justice for everybody who comes before us. And then I want to contrast that with my opponent. He made himself well known in Kenosha County by being chair of the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission, and he ran that commission into the ground. So if you want to choose someone who's going to take these issues seriously and try to be part of the solution, then I am clearly the correct choice for the job because you have already seen what my opponent has done with his opportunity.
Ben? Describe your particular goals or a vision that you might consider a priority for you to focus on in the next 2 years.
Well, I think what I've heard at the doors and what I think aligns most with my priorities is really tackling the public education problem that we were just talking about. Kenosha is facing a $19 million deficit, right, that has to be filled, right? As we've said, our public education system is absolutely essential to our survival, all the way up to the very nature of our democracy, right? And there is a solution to this problem. We're sitting on billions of dollars of surplus, right? A burgeoning rainy day fund in the state, and that money is simply sitting there and being tied up and held hostage by the Republican legislature, right? And think of what good that money could do if it were invested smartly into our communities. Right? That would provide a lifeline for so many families, right? We also need to tackle things such as grant programs for new business, particularly new businesses for underserved members of our community, making sure that there are equal opportunities out there for building up our communities from the small business perspective. And also I think we can do a lot for to stimulate home buyership as well. There's a lot of movement that can be made with grants for first-time home buyers. And I know that's also a priority for Kamala Harris as well.
Well, as I said at the beginning of this program, my number one priority is always making sure that working people, working men and women, have an opportunity to have a path into economic security, so they can retire and they can choose the future they'd like to have. Right now, I think it's pretty clear the number one challenge that is facing working men and women is an affordability crisis, and it is in everything. And so there's a number of big ticket items that I believe that we can help families afford better. I would say, to start with, I think the challenge of having access to and affording childcare is a major cost for a lot of working families. It is something that factors into the decision whether to work or not work for many people. And so I think we need to do more. We had worked very hard on trying to pass childcare counts this past session. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Luckily, the governor was able to shake out the couch cushions and partially fund it. But in this next session, we have to look at how we're going to address this long term so that more working people can afford to have access to childcare and where childcare doesn't break the bank. The second area that I think that a lot of people struggle with, and where we have a very easy, straightforward solution, is healthcare. Right now, Wisconsin has yet to accept the federal healthcare dollars that Barack Obama put in place with Obamacare back when he was president. Can you imagine that? And we know, because the vast majority of states have accepted this funding, we know that this can lower the cost of private health care for most people. And so with that, I think that we can lower the cost of health insurance for many families, we can lower the cost of health care, and we can make sure that we have access to health care across the state by making sure that our hospitals and medical facilities do have the funds that they need to continue to succeed.
Final question goes to the district attorney candidate. How can the office of the district attorney assist in addressing recidivism in Kenosha County? And in the same vein, are there tools available for the office to help imprisoned individuals as they reenter society?
So in Kenosha County, one thing that we've done is we've looked at some data. And we've seen from the data that Kenosha County last year was actually #1 per capita in the number of people who were sent to prison. And so in one way, it says the DA's office is doing our job, but in another way, it says we have some really serious offenders here in Kenosha County. And the reality is, almost everybody who enters prison is going to be released. There's very, very few cases where someone gets a life sentence or the functional equivalent of a life sentence. And so the question is, what is going to happen when that person is released back into our community? And so that's why I think there has to be strong community support systems. And we've partnered throughout the years with the DA's office with various reentry efforts in our community. And that is something that I would continue to do as the district attorney, because again, the best thing we can do is prevent crimes or work to prevent crimes from being committed to begin with. And of course, a high-risk population are those individuals being released from prison. So it's important that those individuals, if it's safe, can reconnect with their families, can be employed, and can work to start a new life. And we've really had some awesome success stories of that happening in Kenosha County. We have an individual who was even given a pardon by the governor, someone who was in prison for drugs, turned his life around, and is an example. And people like that show hope to individuals who are being released from prison now. And so again, that's something I would strive to continue as district attorney in our community.
We'll go into closing statements. 2 minutes for each.
Well, thank you. And it was so nice to see all of you here. Thank you to those who are viewing at home. I certainly enjoyed answering these questions for you. As I said earlier, my name is Tip McGuire. I represent the 64th Assembly District. The approach that I've taken in the legislature has been to find avenues to get something done. That has been my #1 goal. I don't go on Twitter to score points. I don't spend my time picking fights unless absolutely necessary to try and get something positive done for people. I'm being serious right now. But I look for opportunities to collaborate and cooperate so that we can get something across the finish line that benefits people. I will continue to do that with 2 more years in the Wisconsin State Assembly. I appreciate you watching, and if you have any questions or you ever need anything, I am the only Tip in the legislature. It's real easy to find me.
Well, thank you again for hosting this forum. It's been a pleasure being here. My name is Ben DeSmit. I'm running as the candidate in the 65th Assembly District. We have so much opportunity in this election. It's really made me very proud simply to be part of this ticket. We have the chance to take back the majority in the state assembly in this election, right? We've only had that majority twice in the last 29 years. We have the opportunity to roll back all of the terrible accomplishments of Scott Walker, right? Roll back Act 10, roll back right to work, bring back project labor agreements, right? And really start rebuilding our middle class, right? We have the opportunity also to do that in education, right? We have the opportunity to do that in housing. We have the opportunity to do that in so many aspects of our lives, right? And I ask for your support to bring that spirit to Madison and to continue fighting for you. Thank you.
In this DA's race, what I'm asking people to do is to evaluate this by putting politics aside and saying, making the same decision that you would make when choosing any other professional in your life. If you are picking a doctor who's, you're putting your life, your care in that doctor's hands, you would never ask that person, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? You want the most qualified, the most capable, the most experienced professional when we have serious things at stake. And that is what the decision that you are making when you're voting for DA in this election. I am the only candidate who has ever prosecuted a case. My opponent has never prosecuted a case. He has been a career defense attorney. And so when I say I am the best candidate for the job, how do you know that is true? And I'm going to tell you how, because every single person in my office of over 40 people endorses me. They know my work and they know my opponent's work, and they have chosen to support me for the good of the office. I also have the support and endorsement of law enforcement, and I'm proud to say that the law enforcement officers who support me the most are the ones who've worked with me most closely on their cases. I've also won 2 statewide awards as a prosecutor, so my peers have said that this person is good at her job, she's a good prosecutor. And finally, if you are trying to gather enough information to make this decision, I urge you to go on YouTube and look up the Mark Jensen case. You can see me at work in the courtroom. You can watch my opening, you can watch my closing in one of the most important cases. Then contrast that, go on YouTube again, and look at my opponent at the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission. The elephant in the room is that he's not here today, and as bad as that looks, it would look even worse if you saw him struggling to answer these questions. So again, pick the best person for the job.
Well, thank you, candidates, for your passion for our community, your commitment to these positions, and the courage to run for office. I'd like a special thank you to the Women's Club of Kenosha for opening their doors and providing this wonderful and beautiful venue. The joint efforts of the nonpartisan, not-for-profit Women's Club, AAUW Kenosha, and the Kenosha Women's Network made tonight's informative forum possible. If you are interested in information in joining these worthy organizations, please reach out to them online or see one of the members. A special note of a save the date for the 2025 Susan B. Anthony Awards Dinner, which is scheduled to be held on Friday, March 28th. As a further reminder, in-person early voting begins next Tuesday, October 22nd at your local municipality. An additional reminder that the election will occur on Tuesday, November 5th. No one's counting the days, I'm sure. Polls will open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. Please exercise your right to vote. Thank you all for attending and watching. Thank you again, candidates, for participating in tonight's forum. May God bless Kenosha County, the great state of Wisconsin, and the United States of America. Have a good evening.